Imran Khan here for second out. Pleasure to be in the company, albeit over Zoom with Duke McKenzie MBE. Duke, good to see you. Let's get straight into the boxing action we saw at Wembley last night that Oleksandr Usyk captured for the second time around the Undisputed Heavyweight crown, beating Daniel Dubois for the second time, this time on British soil. What unfolded before your eyes at Wembley?
Well, first of all, morning, Emma. And, I think I'm like most people in saying as much. When you look at Oleksandr Usyk and you see what he does and the relative ease in which he does it, that's what makes this guy a real maverick for me. He really is. I've even changed my mind a little bit about him now in saying that he's not an all-time great. I think what we're actually witnessing, or what we actually witnessed last night, was real greatness. He made that fight look absolutely effortless. He made that fight look absolutely effortless. But you can only imagine the amount of hard work that's gone in behind the scenes. When I saw a clip of Oleksandr Usyk shadowboxing before this fight, he looked like he was actually going to war. He looked like he only had one thing on his mind. And, the same thing could be said of Dubois. What Dubois' mindset was going into this fight, destroy and destruct, that's what Usyk had in the back of his mind. He wasn't looking to go the distance in that fight last night. I can't honestly say I've seen him come out as aggressive as he did. And bearing in mind, when he clipped Dubois with the first shot, he was on the back foot. He clipped him. Usyk was on the back foot. It was as Dubois was coming in. Now, I'm not saying Dubois was shell shocked by the event. I'm not saying that Dubois froze by the event, but Dubois looked to me so tentative. He was coming forward, but there was no head movement. I don't know what's going on in Daniel Dubois' camp, because you can't fight any southpaw, never mind one as good as Oleksandr Usyk, without a bit of head work, a bit of head movement. Dubois doesn't slip shots. You never see him slipping anything. And it is a criticism, because I'm sure he can add to his game. All right, maybe he'll go away and he'll learn from this. But I think what we witnessed last night really it was a great fight. We're looking at a great fighter. We're looking at an all-time great. And, I wasn't going to call him an all-time great until the demolition job he did on Dubois last night. But when you look at what he does, Usyk, his punch economy and the way that he throws these shots, and he's just so loose and he's so compact. It was an absolute demolition job.
You're speaking about Dubois and head movement. I'm pretty certain that in the first fight with Oleksandr Usyk, he did employ head movement to slip Usyk's shots. But in terms of that first fight, was he better or worse in this second outing of Dubois?
Yeah, he was nowhere near as good in this second fight as he was in his first fight. But maybe that's because Usyk raised his game. I said before the fight, Daniel Dubois is going to bring out the best in Oleksandr Usyk. Dubois, the way he was talking before the fight, you really believed in what he was saying. And a lot of people actually tipped Dubois, I'm sure for sentimental reasons and values, they tipped him to, they wanted him to win. It's at Wembley. You got 90,000 people. Everybody was so gassed on him winning the fight. But you know what Usyk done? Usyk raised his game. Dubois brought out the best in Usyk last night. What you saw in Usyk last night, it was a majestic performance. It was an absolute a destructive performance. But it was measured, because he wasn't just throwing shots aimlessly. He knew what was coming. And anytime Dubois stepped into range, if you see what Usyk done, he took half a step back and he let his hands go. And then he switched on him. He went to the right or he went to the left. And that, it's not an easy thing to do. But another thing I'd stated before the fight, that Usyk was as comfortable fighting over here as he would have been in the Ukraine. He had so much support last night. He never felt like he was away from home at all. The guy travels well. I felt a little bit sorry for Dubois, because after the final knockdown, he didn't know where he was. And he felt so humiliated that he'd been blown away with that kind of ease. Because, again, I'm not trying to belittle Dubois, but you're not going to see a more one-sided world title fight than that, unless you're watching in mine when I lost, obviously. I've been KO'd in a round before. It was terrible. But, you know, it was a one-sided beatdown. I didn't make Dubois win a single round. I don't think he won a minute of either of the 5 rounds that were completed. I don't know what the other boys I know what the other boys were saying when they were there live, the ringside commentators there, you know, giving Dubois a share of a couple of the rounds, but I didn't see that. And I know that you can sit at different sides of that ring and see a completely different fight. But from what I observed, I didn't see Dubois winning any one of those rounds. What do you think?
No, yeah, no, I agree with you that it was a tough to find a Dubois round that's solid at the very least. And moving on to that finish, my colleague Radio Raheem was at Wembley and he spoke to a number of people. He spoke to Derek Chisora, who's always kind of championed Daniel, want to see him do well, partly because, of course, back in the Brit, but also because Daniel is with Don Charles, his trainer, and wants to see him do well. But Derek held nothing back and said that he felt that Daniel Dubois quit in the ring last night. Can we go as far as to say that Daniel did do that?
Daniel never quit last night. Daniel Dubois was genuinely hurt. Usyk hits him with a right hook, catches him, clips him, and then the overhand left that he throws nailed him as clean as day. You know, hit him right up on the top of his head. He was gone. And, you know, the second knockdown obviously was worse than the first knockdown, because if you see when Dubois goes down and he's on his side, he's looking around in no man's land. He doesn't know where he is. He never quit. I don't know where Chisora's going with that one. I mean, like I say, Usyk is so majestic in the way that he carries himself. You know, every time Dubois took a step in, Usyk just put his hands up. And another thing that really surprised me about Dubois was how slow his punches were. Again, I would almost say to myself, the 90,000 capacity at Wembley last night, it drained Dubois of his energy because he looked lackluster. There was no snap in his punches. There was no real devil in his punches. You never really saw Dubois do what he said he was going to do. You know, he said there was going to be carnage at that fight. And that's what I expected, because that's how I figured that was the only way he was going to win the fight, was if he could create havoc and carnage and really put it on Usyk. But the master that Usyk is, he just took everything in his stride, because there wasn't any, like I say, urgency in Dubois' work. The shots weren't being put out in 2s and 3s and 4s. You know, I didn't see Dubois try to put the nut on him or hit him low or even manhandle him, which he should have done. These are the tactics I would have adopted, because as I said before, I'm not saying they would have worked. I'm just saying how I would approach that fight. But there was none of that, and he got picked apart. He got absolutely ruined last night.
What next for Oleksandr Usyk, who in the post-fight interview said that it was brought up about his age, and he said 38 is just a number, and he's just getting started, alongside not really being pinned down on an opponent, but welcoming and asking the crowd if they wanted Joe Parker, Derek Chisora, and Joshua. I think Tyson Fury was on the list. Pacquiao Shaker said he wants to pitch Oleksandr Usyk with Moses Itauma. But what would you like to see, or who would you like to see Oleksandr? Jake Paul did a face-off Duke as well too with Oleksandr Usyk. I had to say it happened last night. But who would you like to see Usyk in with next?
Well, nobody's more deserving than Parker, right? Joseph Parker. He's been waiting so patiently for his bite at the cherry. He deserves a shot. I hope that Usyk has one more fight and then walks away from the sport, because, like I say, we're looking at a generational great, and father time creeps up on you sooner rather than later. You know, obviously in hard fights. The fight last night wasn't a hard fight for Usyk. I bet he's gone back to a sauna straight after the fight, or probably gone and done a 5-mile run after the fight, because he's still got all that energy, because he's such a fit guy. You know, age is a number where he's concerned. There's only a small handful of fighters that can fight past their prime. But Usyk doesn't look like he's past his prime at all. Like I said before, he's purring along quite comfortably. He's untouchable in the heavyweight division. There's nobody going to beat him. I hope that Turkey Al-Sheikh doesn't put that young Moses Itauma anywhere near Usyk, because Usyk would ruin him and probably end his career. But like I say, Joseph Parker, he's the most reward. He deserves that reward. He's the more deserving to get a shot at Usyk. Usyk's already dealt with Joshua. Usyk's already dealt with Fury. There isn't anybody else. There just isn't anybody else. And Usyk knows that as well. So he can pick whoever he wants to fight, and he deserves to be able to pick whoever he wants to fight. And the only guy that he hasn't fought would be Joseph Parker. And let's hope that happens. I hope these governing bodies don't strip him of any of the titles. I hope he can retire as an undisputed, unbeaten world champion that still holds all of the belts.
Of those three names that you highlighted there, Itauma, Joe Parker, Tyson Fury, if either of them were to land the fight with Usyk next, which of those do you feel would have the best chance at beating him?
Well, Parker's got to be the one for me that would have the best chance. I'm not going to say, but he's not going. Nobody's beat. I hear what you're saying, right? So I'd like to see Parker against Usyk because Parker deserves it, and we don't know what Parker's going to bring to that fight, and he may give you one or two answers to just how great Usyk is. I wouldn't want to see Usyk fight anybody else because he's beaten everybody else that's out there, with the exception of Moses Itauma. And obviously, he's yet to earn his right to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world. But he's a much improved young man. He's getting better with every fight he has, but not ready for that genius just yet. He's not.
Is there any sense in saying that? I just wanted to discuss that further because a lot of talk about Itauma and the track that he's on and whether he is the real deal or not. And for all intents and purposes, so far, he's proving to be. So is there any sense that with Oleksandr Usyk's greatness that Itauma does get put in there to try and make go for greatness? If he falls short, he's still got the experience of being in with someone like Oleksandr Usyk, and if he wins, then the upside is brilliant, and you've got a launch pad for a real heavyweight star.
Well, I guess that's what they're thinking. If that is the case, and they put Itauma in with Usyk, then should he lose, which undoubtedly I'm sure he would, then he can come again. He's young enough, and one defeat doesn't define your career. It would depend on the manner of defeat, on how badly he gets beat down. Because what you saw last night with Dubois was a beatdown. Everybody's talking about Moses Itauma, and rightly so, because he's beaten everything that's been put in front of him. And he's starting to get a big reputation now. So, we'll just have to wait and see where that one's concerned, I think.
The other name that I didn't quite get a comment from you on was that of Jake Paul, who was in the ring. That could be a real possibility. Even Oleksandr Usyk said he'd accept the opportunity if it came to him.
Yeah, of course he would. Listen, that would be the easiest 100 million that he could ever make. It would be the easiest. He probably wouldn't even train for that fight. Because he could probably have fought Jake Paul last night, straight after Daniel Dubois. As far as I'm concerned, there's no place for it. But this is the entertainment industry that we're in, and industry that we're at. Could it happen? Quite possibly. Will it happen? I hope not. Let's just hope that we keep it real, and boxers fight boxers. And, entertainers and YouTubers fighting YouTubers and entertainers, because Jake Paul would be in serious danger of being seriously hurt. And you really wouldn't want to see that. So I'd rather see Moses Itauma fight Usyk than Jake Paul fight Usyk if it was between those two.
The last couple of final questions are focusing back onto Daniel. What's needed to be done in this down period away from the cameras to ensure that Daniel doesn't take this second defeat to Oleksandr Usyk too much to dent him? A lot of talk about fighters, and they can be ruined by moments such as these.
Yeah.
So what's done in the background to make sure that doesn't happen?
Well, again, You see, I don't know why Daniel Dubois doesn't move his head. He gets his hands up and he just tries to walk you down. But there's no head movement. There's no lateral movement. You never see Daniel Dubois roll from the waist or look to slip and block shots. He's, why they haven't introduced that into his training regime, I don't really know, because that would carry him a long way. Usyk's in a class of his own. There isn't anybody else like him. There's never going to be another one like him while Dubois on, boxing. So there's improvement to be made with Dubois. I'm hoping he can come back from that knockout. The only problem Dubois got now, the 3 times he's lost, he's been chinned 3 times. He hasn't lost on points. He's been KO'd. There's a pattern developing. And I don't like it. So if they want to try and eradicate that pattern, then they got to make some massive changes to the whole of Dubois' makeup, because you can't just keep walking forward and eating shots and throwing your bombs and not expect to get bombed out the water. Daniel Dubois looked sensational in the Joshua fight, because he did exactly that with Joshua. But Joshua couldn't finish him. Joshua had him hurt, but he couldn't finish him. And, that was classy on Dubois' part. And you really thought, okay, he was going to do some, do some good things. But it looks like that confidence has gone to his head, because he just thought he could walk through. He thought he could just walk through Usyk last night without any head movement. There was no jab. There was, I love jabs. That was my best shot, right? And I would love to see Dubois doubling that jab, tripling that jab even, and stepping in behind it and giving Usyk some head movement and, getting hold of him, turning him round. Do you see what I mean? Trying to do different things, but he didn't do any of that. And he's paid the ultimate price.
Very last thing, and switching tactics to Manny Pacquiao returned to the ring. It was only a few hours ago for myself, but it was overnight for you guys over in the UK. At the ripe old age of 45, 46, or young, I guess should be the lesson learned from Oleksandr Usyk. Drew with Mario Barrios. Did you manage to catch some of the fight? Do you feel that Pacquiao was hard done by or deserved a draw or even a defeat?
No, I thought Barrios. I thought Barrios nicked it. I thought Barrios should have won it. I don't think Pacquiao's got any place still fighting in the game. That's the negative side. The plus side is this old man's just gone 12 rounds with the current world champion, right? With a world champion. That's a victory in itself. He's an old man, and he hasn't boxed for, 6, 7 years or whatever it is. I thought he looked terrible in his last fight, Pacquiao, when he did an exhibition fight, or the last one that I watched him in. But last night, I don't think he looked great. It wasn't a great fight, wasn't a great spectacle. Barrios isn't an outstanding champion, but I thought he won the fight. I don't think Pacquiao won.
Well, Duke, let's leave that there. It's been another insightful conversation. I'm already looking forward to, as per usual, as it is with our conversations, to the next one. Thank you so much for the seconds out, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thanks for your time, Eman, and I'll talk to you again, champ. God bless.